In 2025, we celebrated 100 years since St Madeleine Sophie Barat, the founder of the Society of the Sacred Heart, was made a saint. Across the world, we celebrated this special anniversary in many creative ways. But let's imagine now that we can travel back through time and across the miles and learn more about Sophie. We travel back to Joigny, a little town about an hour south of Paris in France. We're joined by Chouette, a little owl native to this region. The town of Joigny is beside the river Yonne. The town is made of wooden houses and many families are involved in winemaking. There are vineyards all around the town on the hills. The Barat family live here. Jack and Marie Madeleine already have 2 children. Louis is 11 and Marie-Louise, who is 10. Jack makes barrels to store the local wine, and Marie Madeleine helps with the finances as well as caring for the family home. In December of 1779, a fire began in Joigny and slowly spread through the wooden houses of the town. As it got nearer and nearer to the Barat house, Mrs. Barat went into labour. That night, in this room, baby Sophie was born 2 months early. She was very small and fragile. The morning after her birth, on the 13th of December, Louis carried baby Sophie to their local church for baptism. He was to be her godfather, and from that moment dedicated his life to helping her grow and learn into a person who could change the world. Sophie grew into an energetic and bright child. She loved to study and ask questions, but her favourite time of year was the vendange, or harvest. All of the town of Joigny came together as a community to gather and press the grapes and celebrate with a big feast when it was complete. The Barat family were the heart of the community, and Sophie's mum and dad were known for their kindness to anyone who needed help or looking after. Sophie's brother Louis was training to become a priest, and he encouraged Sophie to study and learn. Sometimes it was very tough for Sophie, who missed out on playing with her friends, but she also really enjoyed learning new things. As she got older and became a teenager, life changed for Sophie and for all of France. The French Revolution began, and it became very dangerous to be a Catholic. Because Joigny was quite close to Paris, Sophie was very worried about what might happen to her family, and especially to her brother Louis, who sometimes had to hide in the attic of the house. Then the worst thing Sophie feared happened. Her brother Louis was sent to prison in Paris, and the family were very scared that he would be killed, as many others had been. Sophie was a teenager, very devoted to prayer, and her family would gather in front of a painting of the Sacred Heart of Jesus in their kitchen, praying that Louis would be safe and one day come home to them. About 2 years after his arrest, Louis was released from prison and returned to Joigny. Now that Sophie was 16, he wanted her to go to Paris with him to continue her studies. He knew she had a special calling to do something for God. Sophie joined some other young women in Paris, studying hard and thinking about how they could help to heal France that had been so damaged by the revolution. Sophie knew that prayer could be a very powerful way of making a change in the world, but she also knew that education could change the hearts and minds of people. Was there a way to do both things? When Sophie was 20, Louis introduced her to Father Joseph Varan. He was a priest who was involved in the education of boys, and he had an idea that there should be a group of religious sisters who could do the same for girls. Sophie agreed to be one of 4 women who started this little society. On November 21st, 1800, Sophie and 3 friends made their profession to become the first sisters of the Society of the Sacred Heart. Their mission was to share the love of the heart of Jesus as widely as possible through education. Sophie opened the first Sacred Heart School in Amiens, France in 1801, when she was only 21 years old. Just 3 years later, Sophie met Philippine Deschênes, and they became great friends. Philippine also wanted to spread the love of the heart of Jesus to as many people as possible. Philippine had a lifetime dream of moving to North America and opening schools there. In 1818, after a long journey across the Atlantic Ocean, Philippine arrived in New Orleans, and set up the first Sacred Heart School. Just 2 years later, Sophie opened a large school in Paris, which attracted lots of students who came from rich and powerful families. The fees that they paid meant that a free school for poor and orphan children could open next door. Sophie and her sisters were able to educate these young women to become a force for good in the world at a time when it was more usual to only educate boys. In another 20 years, Sophie had set up schools in 8 countries, and this included starting the first Sacred Heart School in England. In 1842, 6 sisters and 2 students set up school at Berrymead Priory in West London. In 1844, Sophie came to visit England for the first time, and she stayed with some French sisters in what is now our Sacred Heart School in Hammersmith. I wonder if she went back to Paris and thought, that would make a good school for us one day. In 1865, at the age of 85, Sophie Barat died in her home in Paris. At the time of her death, there were more than 3,500 Sacred Heart sisters in 16 countries around the world. The Sacred Heart sisters continued to grow in number and communities, and in 1925 the Church announced Sophie to be a saint. By this point in time, there were over 200 schools and communities in 28 countries around the world. You might have heard the most famous quote of Sophie, "For the sake of one child, I would have founded the society." Throughout the last 100 years, the Society of the Sacred Heart has continued to educate young women and men who've gone on to be great change makers in our world, as politicians, sportswomen, artists, actors, musicians, scientists, and teachers, of course. And not all Sacred Heart sisters are teachers. There are many other ways that education happens in the society today. There are sisters who are doctors, lawyers, counsellors, artists, writers, climate campaigners, all united in one mission, just as Sophie, to spread the love of the heart of Jesus to as many as possible all over the world. And all over the world, each year on May 25th, our Sacred Heart family celebrate the feast of St Madeleine Sophie Barat. This year, however your community is celebrating Sophie's special day, let's pray together for one another with one heart.